Hello there. Welcome into a Tuesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that, of course, is 100% free and sponsored by Diversus Health. Mental health and well-being for all. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you, and I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. And it is just a Tuesday because there is nothing else to be recognized today because you and I are adults. So any other thing that is going on today, especially on social media, is not recognized on this radio program. I make jokes. Love a good joke. But I don't do the thing that a lot of people do today because it's lame. Just want to get that out of the way, first of all. So now let's get into the 100% true things going on in sports today. You know, when the Avs beat Dallas, I remember being on this show and talking about the motivation that the Avalanche have at this time of the season. They have been pretty much locked in to their matchup with Dallas for a while. And leading up to the Dallas game, the Avalanche looked like an absolute wagon. And then if you recall in the Dallas game, they were dominating, let go of the rope a little bit, made a couple of mistakes in the third period. It cost them, and they had to go to overtime to win. Now, at the time, I attributed that more to Dallas and just saying you can't keep a team like Dallas down for long. And inevitably, they are going to push back at some point. I didn't really look at it as any problem with the Colorado Avalanche. Yes, they made the mistakes that ultimately Dallas pounced on, but that happens. The best teams make mistakes in games, and good teams capitalize. Now, it's looking like this third period thing from the Colorado Avalanche is a trend. And it happened last night again, where the Avalanche, who were the better team for the first two periods without equivocation, overmatched the Calgary Flames, a team that they had already beaten multiple times this season. They were going for the season sweep. Then the third period comes along. And the Avs get a little sloppy. Avs make some mistakes. Calgary pounces. Forces overtime, and the Avs end up losing in the shootout with the weirdest shootout lineup I've ever seen. Why Jared Bednar came up with those guys. Was it Charlie Coyle, Valeri Nichushkin, and who was the other one? It was a weird combination of guys, but it's a shootout, whatever. So my question is, now that this is happening more and more, is this more of a deficiency with the Colorado Avalanche than it is the other team? Because while I don't look at Calgary and say, or St. Louis, although St. Louis, some people are saying they're the dark horse now to come out of the West. So I'll give you my thoughts on it, and I'll take yours at 719-247-1313. I do think that the Avalanche are having a difficult time right now raising their desperation level to the same point as their opponent. I do see that. You have a team in St. Louis, followed immediately by a team in Calgary, that there is a reality, especially for Calgary, that they're not even in the postseason. Okay, St. Louis, they're going to be in. But still, they're scratching, clawing, they're playing great hockey, they're trying to find a way and see if they can't, I don't know, jump the Avs. I do think that when you put the Avs against St. Louis, when you put the Avs against Calgary, it's hard to say that the Avs have more on the line. I can at least leave it at that, and we can all agree on this. And the Avalanche are having a problem for 60 minutes playing playoff hockey, right? Where their desperation level is just as high as the other. They're locked in for 60 minutes, no lapses, no getting sloppy. They're having some trouble with that right now. And Brock Nelson talked about it after the game. In the playoffs, you must close out those kind of games. You've been by far the better team for 40 minutes, 45, 50, 55, whatever it was before Calgary got on the board. You have to be able to close out those games. And I agree with him. I think fundamentally the question here is, are you worried that they can't once the playoffs roll around? I think that's really the conversation here. Clearly, what happened against Dallas was not a one-off. Clearly, we are seeing the Colorado Avalanche over the last few games having trouble, despite being the better team for the vast majority of the game, not being able to finish out a full 60-minute effort to close out a team and get a win. And I thought that catching Dallas, leapfrogging Dallas, having home ice was enough of a motivating factor for this team. It may not be. It may not be when juxtaposed. It's one thing to say for Dallas, right? The team right next to them. It's another thing to talk about that being the same level of motivation as St. Louis or Calgary have, who have been fighting for their playoff lives for the last month and a half, 2 months. So maybe that the motivation is there for the Avs, that they want to get home ice, they want to leapfrog Dallas, all that kind of stuff. But when you put it up against, if we don't keep winning, our season is over, it just, they're not the more desperate team. But is there a real reason to think that the Avs, when the stakes are higher, when they're just as high for the Avalanche as they are their opponent, that the Avs won't fix this? I think it's a fantastic, ink blot test. I put one out here for the Nuggets. If I told you that the Nuggets were playing the Minnesota Timberwolves in the first round, how worried would you be? And that is kind of the litmus test for your faith in the Denver Nuggets and what you're seeing from them as of late. So I could do the same thing for the Avs. Do you think that them letting go of the rope in last night, St. Louis, Montreal, Dallas, is a bigger issue, and you have your doubts that they can button that up? Because I will present to you what Nikola Jokic said just a couple weeks ago. He doesn't believe that you can flip a switch. Who you are in the regular season is who you are in the postseason. And I agree with that to an extent. But are we overreacting? If we're applying that to the Avalanche, are we overreacting just a little bit to a couple of games? Nikola Jokic is talking about a team that for the vast majority of the season has not been able to beat elite teams, has not been able to defend the perimeter for 70 games. We're talking about this newly constructed Avs team only being together for X number of games since the trade deadline, looking amazing for most of this stretch up until now. So I think the way that they're playing in this spell that they're going through, I don't think you can use what Nikola Jokic said about the Nuggets and apply it here, because it's a small enough sample size that I can look at it and say, look at the teams they're playing. Look at the desperation level from their opponents. Look at what the Avs have to play for, or more accurately, what they don't have to play for. I don't think this is something that's happening with the Avs that should give you pause when they get into the playoffs. You don't like to see it. And it has become a trend of late. But I think we've seen too much good from this team to worry about the last 10 games. With the Denver Nuggets, I was worried in October about this team, and they have done very little to dissuade me. I'm only now starting to get onto the idea that maybe, just maybe, if their 5 starters are healthy, that's the key. And maybe that's what's influencing my belief or lack thereof in the Denver Nuggets. Coincidentally, since I said that, we have not seen the Denver Nuggets starting 5 altogether again. But with the Avs, and I think it's ingrained in me, I don't know about you, watching these two teams as closely as I do, I always have more confidence in the Colorado Avalanche than I do the Denver Nuggets. That's just that's just my general take on it. No matter if I'm down on both teams, if I'm high on both teams, I'm always a little bit more bullish on the Avalanche. Just a little bit. So maybe that's what's happening here. I'm not saying last night wasn't disappointing. You left points out there that you could have easily had given the way you have played for the vast majority of the game. You have done this multiple times over the last couple of weeks. It's not the type of form you want to be going in excuse me, into the playoffs with. I acknowledge all that. But I think this team has shown enough throughout the course of the entire season that tells me this is just a matter of desperate teams going up against the Colorado Avalanche and the Avalanche not having enough on the line to match that desperation. It's not, I'm not trying to say that, I'm not trying to give the Avs a pass. Right? You got to try and do it. And Jared Bednar talked about it. Like, they have to raise their desperation level. They have to close out these games. Brock Nelson said it too. And I agree with that. But I think I'm willing to let this play out a little bit more and say, okay, if it happens every game from here on out, then check with me then. But I feel like this is a stretch of games that we're taking a couple of games out and pointing to it and saying this is a problem that will stick with the Avs through the playoffs. I just don't believe it. I don't. That's where I'm at on the whole thing. And I'll take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. The recent form you have seen from the Avs, this trend of letting go of the rope proverbially in the third period. Do you think it's something that could haunt them come playoff time? 719-247-1313. Just getting going with this Tuesday edition of the show. Glad to have you here on Extra Sports 1300. Join me this Monday as I take the show back to Trainwreck for the national championship game. Come by, enjoy some outstanding food and beverage. Also take advantage of 2 acres of both indoor and outdoor entertainment. Then stick around to watch the Natty on their stadium-sized television. That's Monday. I'll be there starting at 3. Come by anytime. Trainwreck, 812. South Sierra Madre. Talking about the Avs last night, letting go of the rope again in the third period, costing them a point against the Calgary Flames. Big deal, little deal. I'll let you decide. I say little deal. Got this text in from the 719. Avs can't bring their desperation level to their opponents. I'm a Sabres fan. Welcome to my world. I think that might be a talent thing with Buffalo, as much as anything else. But that's a team that certainly, with the young pieces they have, you're like, why haven't they hit yet with all these good young players that they have? But they should be playing desperate. They haven't made the postseason in a very long time. I will tell you something that happened last night that would worry me if I'm an Avs fan, and it actually was sent in. You know, when you watch the show on our social media platforms, you can also interact there, and then I can do this fancy thing and show the comment on the screen like I just did. B-Rad says, when no one steps up for Kale getting hit like that, it's a problem. If you ask me what happened last night that would worry me more, it is exactly what B-Rad is saying there. So, but let me put some framework in place here, okay? Because I listen and I watch these games, and I feel like the drama of it all gets played up a little bit. Okay? Kale hit Coleman. Can we at least agree that if you were a Calgary fan, you would be upset with the hit that Cale Makar put on Coleman last night? I don't want to get in the minutia. I just feeling, because I'm going somewhere with this. If you're Calgary, you don't like the hit that Cale put on. His arm got a little bit high there. I totally understand Coleman coming back at him. Maybe you don't agree, and I know that on the television broadcast, you would think that Cale Makar was getting robbed at gunpoint in the middle of a game. I get it. They want to protect Cale. I'm getting to that. I actually don't have a problem with Coleman coming back at him. Okay? Should you do it in the fashion in which he did and go up high on him, the eye for an eye? I don't know that I can totally subscribe to that, but I do understand the emotion that Coleman was having, and I understand that from Calgary's perspective, they couldn't have liked the hit that Cale put on him. So I actually don't have as big of a problem as many people do with Coleman coming back at Cale Makar. But sticking with the emotion of this, do you not even, because part of it you would look at and say, well, now we're even, right? Cale maybe went a little bit high on Coleman. It was a big hit, maybe a little bit high. And Coleman came back at him in the same fashion. Do we say it's done there? You watch enough hockey. It's never done there. Oh, we're even. You think that the Avs looked at Coleman putting that hit on Kale and went, well, Kale hit him first. Absolutely not. I would expect, and I expected last night, the Avalanche to get a hit on Coleman. Correct me if I'm wrong. I've asked multiple people that watched the game last night. Did you see anybody put a big hit on Coleman the rest of the game? I didn't. I went back and watched, and I didn't see anything. All the discussion was about how dare Coleman go back at Cale Makar like that. Where was the retaliation for the retaliation? This is hockey. And this is, you want to talk about trends about the third period? Here's an Avalanche trend for you. Teams are trying to kill Cale Makar. Are you noticing this? Did you see what St. Louis tried to do to Cale Makar? I know Brad saw it. He was there. Did you see them try to kill Cale Makar? And if not for Cale's superb athleticism and skating ability, he would have gotten rocked. You know, Cale Makar, and he's got to be so tired of this by now. He's got to be so sick of this. But it's hard to look at Cale Makar and not look at him like little brother. Right? It just is. And I don't know that he's ever going to get to an age where you don't think that about Cale Makar. Like, the guy can, I'm sure, beat me up, right? But just the way he looks, you want to protect him. You want to protect Cale. But that was a thing with the Avalanche. Don't mess with Cale Makar. And that happened in the past, that teams would try to go after Cale Makar. You don't go after Nathan MacKinnon. What are you, insane? So, you know, when Mikko Rantanen was there, you probably didn't want to go after Mikko Rantanen either. So teams took liberties going after Cale Makar. This is not a new phenomenon. What is new over the last couple of games, where's the Avs going back at them for that? And I'll tell you why you don't see this. Josh Manson is hurt. Curtis McDermott is no longer on the roster, and Gabriel Landeskog has been out for 3 years. Because if I told you that someone on the Avs should retaliate on behalf of Cale Makar, what would be the names that you would bring up? Josh Manson, he's hurt. Curtis McDermott, he's not on the team anymore. Gabriel Landeskog, you are very familiar with his situation right now. The Avs don't, I know they don't like to use this word anymore in the modern NHL. Where's the Avs enforcer? Because I have, in back-to-back games now, I have seen St. Louis and Calgary, justified or not. Okay, justified or not, it has nothing to do with this. What would you normally expect to happen if Coleman took that hit on Cale Makar, regardless of what Cale had done previously? You would almost bet that somebody would go after Coleman. I didn't see a single person do it. I forget who it was on St. Louis, tried to take Cale Makar's head off at the blue line the other day. Cale Makar skated out of it. But is that not just the intent that player clearly had? You'd absolutely see a teammate stick up for Cale Makar. And I'm not trying to say that this team is soft or anything like that. But I am saying that teams are thinking, okay, how are we going to beat the Avs? You know, the recipe to beat the Avalanche, the game plan to beat the Avalanche, you notice this? It has not changed in years. In years. Take away time and space, get physical with them, especially with Cale Makar. With Nathan McKinnon, you're taking your life into your hands. With Mikko Rantanen, when he was on the roster, you're taking your life in your hands. When Gabriel Landeskog was on the ice, you're taking your life with in your hands. Cale Makar's not going to retaliate. And he goes back like Gretzky, right? Gretzky never fought. It was always somebody coming to his defense. He always had these bodyguards. This is 2 games now where I have not seen the Avalanche go back at a team that is clearly trying to inflict serious damage on Cale Makar. And I'm confident that the desperation level with the Colorado Avalanche will go up in the postseason. And what we are seeing with some of these blown leads, I don't think it's going to be there because the stakes are going to be high. These are the dog days of the season. I don't think this is something that is going to last into the postseason. But if teams catch wind of the idea that they can take a run at Cale Makar and not answer for it, they're going to keep doing that. They're going to keep doing it. And there is a chance that they see St. Louis in the playoffs. That team is absolutely going to try it again because they tried it this weekend. So if you ask me what is the more troubling thing that has transpired over the last few games, it's actually, for me, not the fact that they've given up goals in the third period and it's cost them points, as disappointing as that is. It's that we have seen players go after Cale Makar with no retribution. And I know Cale started it. And if I'm on the Calgary side, I'm saying that Coleman owed him that. Okay? But that's beyond the point. That's not how this works, and you know that. The next time, I don't know if Chicago, Connor Bedard looks like he's depressed. I don't know what Chicago's going to do. And I don't know what Columbus is going to do either. I don't know, those two teams, they might be, especially with Chicago, and I'll speak more to Chicago because I see more of them than Columbus. I don't think Chicago's going to try anything. I think Chicago has been 1-2-3 Cancun for about 6 months. Okay. But the next time on the schedule between now and the postseason that the Avs come up against a team that is a postseason type team or fighting for the postseason, I bet you this happens again. And I would hope, and maybe it's just as simple as the return of Josh Manson. Maybe that's just what it is. They get him back, and now Cale Makar has his bodyguard back, and this will be a moot point. But they haven't had him the last 2 games, and I've seen these teams take runs at Cale Makar. Can happen. 719-24-7. 1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. Comedian Tom Segura is bringing his Come Together tour to Colorado Springs on November 9th. Tickets will go on sale this Friday, April 4th at 10 a.m. Couple of different ways that you can get yours. You could go to axs.com, or you could stop by in person at the Pikes Peak Center box office. Again, the show is in November, but with the comedian as hot right now as Tom Segura is, may want to be ready to jump on that when the tickets go on sale this Friday, April 4th, 10 a.m. Good talk on the Avs. We'll revisit it a little bit later. I want to introduce some other topics here. I was thinking about this last night because the other game that I watched besides the Avs was UConn. And the UConn women's basketball team is going to another Final Four. And there's a tie-in as with yesterday's show because I said that DU hockey has accomplished about the same amount as UConn women's basketball has over the past 10 years. And here they both are in their respective sports Final Four with the chance to win each their fourth national title in the last decade. But I'm watching UConn, for a myriad of other reasons. Obviously, a fan of the game. But I was thinking about this. Paige Beckers last night was unguardable. Unguardable. And I know a lot of people will say it wasn't the same without Juju Watkins in there. Juju Watkins isn't guarding Paige Beckers. So the Paige Beckers you saw last night would have probably still existed had Juju Watkins been on the floor for that game. It was just that maybe Juju Watkins would equal her. But I was thinking about this in light of the moment that women's basketball is having and all of these thoughts that we've discussed about the popularity of the sport, obviously, driven by Caitlin Clark. But Paige Beckers, I find to be a very interesting case because Paige Beckers was this player that you saw last night absolutely dominate, as she has all tournament long and has her entire career at UConn. She was doing this before anybody knew about Caitlin Clark. And now here she is still in college basketball doing it after Caitlin Clark is gone. And I wonder, shouldn't some of this newfound interest that people have when it comes to women's basketball, isn't Paige Beckers a perfect person for these fans to go to? Like, if there's really this trickle-down effect from the Caitlin Clark phenomenon and that people are just getting more into women's basketball, man, do they have a great, even with Juju Watkins getting hurt, still have this player in Paige Beckers that is phenomenal. And shouldn't the people who still want to watch women's college basketball go to Paige Beckers? I don't feel like the hype surrounding Paige is nearly what it is with Caitlin Clark. There's been discussion about attendance being down. Now, Gino Auriemma and some of the other coaches will tell you it's because of this half-baked super regional idea that's keeping so many people from being able to travel to watch these games, and that they think that's more of a reason for it than the fact that Caitlin Clark is gone. I think there's room for both to be a part of it here. But again, you have Paige Beckers, who as a basketball player is in the same pantheon as Caitlin Clark. Right? And I'm not trying to drag down Caitlin Clark to lift up Paige Beckers. Paige Beckers was a phenomenon before Caitlin Clark was. And you look at their production, you could make the argument, you could have a legitimate debate on who is better, Paige Beckers or Caitlin Clark. I'm not stumping for one over the other. I'm just saying, isn't that a worthwhile discussion? So if it's a worthwhile discussion, then and they're at the same level or comparable, why isn't Paige Beckers getting more hype? Especially with Juju out. Like, Paige is it. Like, Paige is the star. I know there's, if you want to go a little bit deeper, Lauren Betts is a terrific player from UCLA. And you're going to see her on Friday. I'm not Hannah Hidalgo at, Notre Dame. Like, there are a lot of elite players in the women's game. But Paige Beckers is with no Juju Watkins, certainly with no Juju Watkins out there, she's the best. She's head and shoulders above everybody else. But yet I don't feel the same energy. Maybe not even close to it for the women's tournament. Just from outside, I don't see it getting talked about as much. It's not as much on social media as it was the last couple of years. And I'm not trying to say that's fair or unfair. I think what it comes down to is just how unique phenomenon are. Caitlin Clark is not as popular as she is just because she's a great basketball player. Right? She's not. Or it's not just that. She is a great basketball player. She's a record-breaking. She's one of the best to ever do it. But what makes something a phenomenon, it's more to it. There's more to it than that, right? And I think one of the big reasons that Caitlin Clark has a level of popularity that Paige Beckers, I don't think is coming that close to. I think it's the personality. And I don't mean that Paige Beckers doesn't have a good personality, but Paige Beckers isn't as great with the media. Right? She has, and she's been through, you can understand, right? She's been in college for how long? And UConn women's basketball is the biggest thing in that part of the country. And she has been interviewed a million times. And I'm sure she's kind of tired of it to an extent. She's always getting asked to do all these things. She's been doing it for a long time. And I just don't think she's as comfortable behind a microphone as Caitlin Clark is. And I think that has something to do with it. I also think the style of play. Part of the phenomenon of Caitlin Clark are her logo three. She's doing something we can't see anywhere else. We don't see another college basketball player shooting threes the way that Caitlin Clark did. So Paige Beckers can put up just as many points as Caitlin Clark. She could drop 40, but she's not doing it hitting logo threes, shots that captivate audiences. She's just doing it, and it sounds so weird to say, but in a normal basketball way. Like, she'll hit a couple of threes, she'll drive, she'll get to the foul line. I just think there's other things that go along with Caitlin Clark You could say she's a better basketball player. That's fine. But what feeds this phenomenon of Caitlin Clark is a lot of other stuff that goes beyond, hey, who's a better all-around basketball player, Paige Bueckers or Caitlin Clark? But even so, I just feel like in a way, Caitlin Clark it's not all the way women's basketball yet. It's still very much Caitlin Clark centric. I think we're still too early for that residual effect and all those people buying in. Are there more people watching women's basketball? I think that there are. But I don't think that this tournament or this final that we have coming up is going to nearly do what Caitlin Clark's games did in terms of ratings, in terms of general interest. I still think that, and maybe we weren't even there quite yet with Juju Watkins, because I do think there's some of that star power with Juju that Paige also doesn't have. And I'm not trying to disparage Paige Bueckers. Like, not everybody has to be a media darling or appear in commercials or anything like that. Paige Bueckers is just a flat out baller. And she's amazing at it. It's not for everybody to appear in State Farm commercials or to, make nice with the media and give a great soundbite. Not for everyone. It doesn't make you lesser than. But if you do it, your star rises a little bit. But Paige Bueckers, setting all that aside, she was unbelievable last night. And she's going to be next year, she's going to certainly add to the WNBA. I don't want to say that Paige Bueckers isn't making an impact. It's just not nearly what Caitlin Clark did. But pretty soon we're going to get Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers on the same court again. And that's going to be a headline game, because Caitlin Clark will bring most people, but really it'll be, they're also Paige Bueckers is playing. Also Angel Reese is playing. Also, right? That's kind of what it is. You show up for Caitlin Clark when she's playing. Oh, even better, she's playing against Paige Bueckers. She's playing against Angel Reese. So still early, but certainly women's college basketball, the interest level in it, I think if there's two players that you attribute it to, it's still Paige Bueckers and Juju Watkins. But it's just they haven't brought quite the interest in energy level to this tournament. I'm talking even before Juju got hurt. Haven't quite brought it the way that Caitlin Clark did. And that's just, it's not to diminish anybody else. It's to lift up Caitlin Clark and say what an unbelievable, amazing star she is. But if you enjoy great basketball, Paige Bueckers is a must watch. And she and UConn are back to the Final Four. Lauren Betts, great player as well. She's going to be in that Final Four. Be good Final Four. You lament that Juju Watkins isn't a part of it, but I talked about this after Selection Sunday. We were going to be either get Paige Bueckers or Juju Watkins. That was always going to be the case, which was disappointing. But obviously other circumstances came in, and that's why it had to be Paige Bueckers. 719-24-7. 1313. More Drive Time Sports after this on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this Tuesday. Ryan Kaufman with you. Appreciate you tuning in, whether you're listening or watching the show, or both. And you can do both on our social media platforms at XTRA Sports 1300. And while you're there, drop a comment, send in something. We'll add it to the mix along with the phone and text line, which is 719 24/7 1313. Tonight, the Denver Nuggets face the Minnesota Timberwolves in a game that I have been talking about for weeks as a very important game. A game that may alter the way I and many feel about the Denver Nuggets going into the postseason. And that night has finally arrived. Michael Malone talked yesterday about this matchup and what it has been lately. Give you his thoughts, and then I will piggyback off of them.
I think they've approached these games like it's a rivalry, and I think we've approached these games like it's another game sometimes. And one of my coaches, Andrew Munson, this is his scout. He says it after every time we play them. He goes, I've watched their last 5 to 7 games, and they never play as hard as they do against us. And you can sense that. You can notice it. So you throw everything else out the window. You know, this team's beaten us 5 games in a row, and hopefully that can, that can resonate within our guys, and we can come out with the proper mindset.
Before we get any further, isn't that just the most damning thing you've ever heard? Why is this not already the case? The Denver Nuggets had their season ended by this basketball team. It was a very emotionally charged 7-game series. And in that, the Nuggets' bid to repeat as NBA champions was ended. Given all of that, shouldn't it be the easiest of games to get up for? The easiest of games. They ended your season. They kind of clowned you. They ended your run at becoming back-to-back champions, something that you were aspiring to be. They took that from you. And in many ways, you were embarrassed in that series, throwing heat packs and wearing down in the second half, all of this kind of stuff that happened. Why 2-3 matchups into the season are we now just getting around to the hope that the Nuggets treat this game as the Timberwolves do? The Timberwolves, if this was the case, if I told you one team got up to play the other and the other one didn't really match that, wouldn't it stand to reason that that's Minnesota? Minnesota beat Denver. They're like, we got these guys. Yet they're the ones that still, even after eliminating them from the playoffs, are still bringing the fight to the Denver Nuggets. They're still the ones playing harder than the Denver Nuggets in these games. That doesn't make any sense to me. I guess revenge is one of the 7 deadly sins. I'm not overly familiar. Maybe you can tell me. But to me, in sports, revenge is a great motivating factor. Shouldn't the Denver Nuggets, I know you want the Denver Nuggets to get revenge on the Minnesota Timberwolves. I know it exists in the fan base. Clearly it exists with the coaching staff. Where is it from the players? And you wonder why I said back in hour number 1 that I'm always a little bit more bullish on the Avalanche than I am the Denver Nuggets. It's stuff like this. Why is this even need to be a conversation? There shouldn't be a single team in the NBA, and I don't even care about Boston. They're on the other side of the bracket. Worry about them when you get there. You only play them twice a year. Like, That's one thing to not really match Boston. And I don't know that it's that they don't get up for that game. I just think that Boston has proven to be more talented than Denver. But if there's one team, and I get it, when you get to a certain level in sports, and we see this with some of the teams, and I know eyes are going to roll out of the back of people's heads, but with the Kansas City Chiefs, yeah, there aren't a lot of games during the regular season that Kansas City circles and on the calendar. And it's not just the Chiefs, the Golden State Warriors, the New England Patriots, the Lakers when they were home, even teams, even the Denver Nuggets in defending their title. I understand that the vast majority of games on their schedule, they're not going to be able to, get up for as much as their opponent does. Even a defending champion, I acknowledge that can be a thing, and that's not horrible. Denver Nuggets aren't defending anything. They're back at the bottom. They said last year we got to climb the mountain again. You're kind of starting halfway up the mountain. Now you're back at the bottom, right? You got bounced in the playoffs fairly early. You didn't look great doing it. The common consensus was that this team has got your number. You're back at the bottom. But still, the Denver Nuggets aren't going to take a game against the Wizards, as we've clearly seen, as seriously as some other games. Minnesota should be the last opponent on that list. If you said we care the least amount about Wizards games and then the Charlotte Hornets and you keep working your way through, the last team you should bring up where the Denver Nuggets don't get up for should be the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Nuggets should be foaming at the mouth for a chance to get their comeuppance on the Minnesota Timberwolves. How did that series not motivate this team to the nth degree? I got to imagine playing on the same court as Anthony Edwards when he's doing all this stuff has got to be unbelievably annoying. And you have Rudy Gobert, and it's like they're so easy to, and I'm talking sports hate here, they're so easy to dislike in a sports way. Anthony Edwards is clowning on them in that game or in that series. I mean, if there is any team that can bring out the best in the Denver Nuggets or to get them to raise their game to another level, it should be Minnesota, and yet we don't see it. And I think it is symptomatic of a larger issue here that I don't know if the Nuggets are going to be able to win another title. This team, the Who's Your Daddy stuff with the LA Lakers, maybe we're not at that level yet with the Minnesota Timberwolves, but my gosh, they've won 5 in a row. They ended the Nuggets season. It is really hard to understand why Michael Malone has to say that on the eve of the last meeting between these two teams during the regular season. Teams that have met up multiple times. And I agree with Michael Malone. It's not about, why is Michael Malone only bringing this up now? I have full confidence that Michael Malone has brought this up before. Probably every single time these two teams have matched up. But whatever, I've openly wondered this. Is Michael Malone's message growing stale? Is this team responding to Michael Malone? I wonder that every now and again. And the Minnesota game seemed to be a pretty good example of that. How could this team I'm not saying you got to circle your calendar and building your whole life around it, but hey, when you see that your next game is Minnesota, that should make you stand up a little bit more straight, get you a little bit more excited. Oh yeah, we got to get back on this team. We didn't like the way last year ended. We got to go back. We got to beat them. And yet, I haven't seen it. I've seen the Wolves blow out the Denver Nuggets. I've seen the Wolves take a Nuggets team that was, without, I think it was a couple of their players. It might have been both Murray and Jokic, if memory serves, and taking an undermanned Nuggets team lightly. And so that game was a little bit closer. I haven't seen the Nuggets take the game to Minnesota. Even in that series, I know that the Minnesota Timberwolves have only won 5 straight against the Denver Nuggets. I felt this the entire 7-game series. I thought the Minnesota Timberwolves from the tip of game 1 imposed their will on the Denver Nuggets. And yes, because the Denver Nuggets have Nikola Jokic and playoff Jamal Murray, they were able to win some games. But every single game, it looked like the Minnesota Timberwolves were getting the better of the Denver Nuggets, and the Denver Nuggets were frustrated. And Christian Brown talked about this yesterday as well. Like, this team has got to raise their physicality level. The entire problem with the Minnesota Timberwolves is they are too physical for the Nuggets. That's what it is until the Nuggets prove me wrong. They can't handle the physicality and the length of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Prove me wrong. Hopefully tonight's the night, because you can't feel great about this basketball team, who I think is going to be full strength. I think they're going to have Jokic and Gordon and Porter and Murray and Brown. They're going to have that starting 5 together. And I have pointed out that one of the only losses they have this season where they've had all 5 of their starters in the game was Minnesota. This is, I don't care what date on the calendar this falls on. This is a big game that has only gotten bigger because of the Nuggets' inability to prove me and others wrong that the Minnesota Timberwolves might just be, even if they're not on the whole more talented than ever, a terrible matchup for them. They hate playing the Minnesota Timberwolves. That's what I want to see tonight. I want to see the Minnesota Timberwolves hate to play against the Denver Nuggets. And that has nothing to do with Dante DiVincenzo and Naz Reid not playing this game. That should make you more confident in the Denver Nuggets tonight. Not DiVincenzo, with all due respect, but not them not having Naz Reid because of the brawl with the Pistons. He and DiVincenzo are suspended a game. That should help them offensively. Naz Reid is a significant loss for Minnesota. But what I want to see, what I'm talking about, doesn't even have Naz Reid's not even part of the equation. I want to see the Denver Nuggets take the game to Minnesota. I want to see them get up on the Wolves shooters and the players and bother them, get physical with them. This is a significant game tonight for the Denver Nuggets. Probably, not even probably, unequivocally, the most important game of the regular season for Denver. They have to show it tonight. They have to show that Minnesota, they can beat Minnesota. And it sounds like an insane thing to say, considering the Wolves aren't even the defending champions. But there is something about this matchup, the length and physicality of the Minnesota Timberwolves, put together intentionally by Tim Connolly. Let us not forget who runs the basketball operations over there. This has been a terrible matchup for the Denver Nuggets. And this is their last chance to show that it's not as bad of a matchup as I think it is. Because there's still a very real possibility this is your first round matchup. This is a playoff preview. And I don't know how you can be confident in the Denver Nuggets going into another 7-game series against the Minnesota Timberwolves based on the previous games you've seen this season. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, the NFL has voted on their new rules. Which ones are you to expect when you tune into the NFL this season? And one that we don't know yet. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. This Saturday, the reigning USL champions, Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC, back at Weiner Field hosting New Mexico United. It is game night, so it's a theme night. Always fun involved with those. Kickoff is at 4. Get your tickets now, switchbacksfc.com. Or you know what? Win them from me right now. Got a pair of tickets to see the Switchbacks take on New Mexico United this Saturday. 13th texter to text Switchbacks and your name to 719-247-1313 will win a pair of tickets for Saturday's match, and I will see you there whether you like it or not. The NFL today voted on most of the proposed rule changes. So here's what you can expect next year when you tune in. You can expect the touchback to be moved out 5 yards further to the 35-yard line, as like Gretchen on Mean Girls with Fetch, as the NFL tries to make the dynamic kickoff happen, because they want you to stay on your couch while the kickoff is going and not go to the refrigerator. That is valuable advertising real estate. They do not want you to leave for a minute. My prediction for this is it will have no change. You will see plenty of kickoffs go through the back of the end zone. The 5 yards up is not enough to change it. To get teams to, okay, now we're going to kick in the landing zone. I just don't see it, because it's the same talk that I heard all of last year, or all of last offseason, I should say, leading up to it. Oh, this new dynamic kickoff, it's so good. You're going to, teams, they wouldn't dare kick it out of the back of the end zone because the penalty is too steep, and you're going to see all these returns. I heard it all last year, and we got none of them. So 5 yards is going to make a world of difference? No. But that is going to happen. Touchbacks will be at the 35. So that one I don't care about. Second one is a good thing, that the postseason and regular season overtime rules will be uniform. We both get the ball. Both teams in overtime will get the ball even during the regular season. And but there's a caveat to it, because why do you make overtime sudden death? To get through it, right? That's why hockey went to a shootout. Let's get on with it here. We got 82 of these in the NFL. We have 17 of these. Let's get through them till we get to the real games in the postseason. So you don't want guys getting hurt, playing additional overtime minutes in week 4. So both teams will get the ball in overtime like you do in the playoffs. But overtime is now 10 minutes. So if you can't figure out a way to decide it, time's going to run out quicker on you. I think that's a positive change. Instant replay, of course, expanding instant replay. The ability to advise the on-field officials on specific objective aspects of a play and or to address game administration issues when clear and obvious video evidence is present. This feels like a significant change. This feels like roughing the passer because there was a blow to the head, and instant replay shows that. Well, take the Texans, right? That hit on Patrick Mahomes. From where the referee was standing, it looked like roughing the passer. But if instant replay steps in and says, no, he went high, but he didn't actually hit him in the head or neck area. He hit him more in the upper chest area. Then that's going to be something that you can overturn. I don't like expanding instant replay, but I know a lot of people do. Other stuff is roster-related stuff that nobody really cares about. Point differential as the third tiebreaker. Controversial. Here's really the two big takeaways. Right? I think the overtime is a significant one. Being able to use, and I think it's that one long-worded one about objective, whatever, calls, instant replay, camera technology now. So I guess it's not the GPS, which I don't understand why not the GPS. This has to do with first downs. That now they're going to have the ability to not have chains and all of that stuff. They'll still have them as a backup, but they will be able to view it and more definitively tell whether Josh Allen reaches the first down marker or not. Because if any rule changes, the Bills are in the middle of it. Right? Any rule that is changed is because of a Bills game. Actually, more specifically, because of a Bills-Chiefs game. Any rule that gets changed, inevitably stemming from something that happened in a Bills-Chiefs game. So Josh Allen now, they can use video to see if he reaches the first down marker or not. I don't have an issue with it. I would use the GPS technology. I don't understand why they don't use that, but I do think, as opposed as I am to expanding instant replay and slowing the game down and doing this freeze frame slow-mo garbage for every single thing, I do think first downs are something that you can easily solve. It won't slow the game down. Did he get it? Did he not? No. Cool. We're moving on. So I'm okay. I'm okay with that. So that's going to happen. So that's, I think, a good change. The overtime rules is a great change. The one that got turned down that I was a proponent of was the illegal contact penalties that on a 3rd and 15 are a 5-yard penalty, but an automatic first down. I am like the Detroit Lions, and I would like to see that eliminated. Make it a 5-yard penalty. If it brings it over the first down marker, great, automatic first down. But should not, or it's not an automatic first down, it's a first down. It should not be an automatic first down is my point. I agreed with that. Owners voted it down. And then there's the brotherly shove. The discussion has been tabled. Why? Why? Why are we doing this? Are we just waiting out the Philadelphia Eagles till they... I think that's legitimately what it is. I think that the NFL is essentially saying we hope that this year somebody figures out a way to stop it. Or the Eagles grow tired of it. And it fixes itself. I don't think that the NFL wants to ban it. And for good reason. They shouldn't want to ban it. There's nothing wrong with the tush push other than your team can't stop it. That's the only thing wrong with it. And it's not, aesthetically pleasing. Okay. Like, you enjoy football enough. Yeah. The 2 times, maybe a game that the Eagles run this is really ruining the rest of the game for you. Come on now. They don't have any real basis, any real thing to go on to ban it. So they're just hoping the problem fixes itself. They view it as a problem because it's unstoppable and not fair. It's not fair that the Eagles get to do this. They just want it to fix itself before they have to step in. That's why they're tabling it. They don't like it. I think you can tell that enough people in the NFL don't like it, that it's brought up and it's a discussion, but I don't think that the NFL at large wants to actually use their authority to completely ban it. I think they're hoping for a natural fixing of it by somebody figuring out a way to stop it. Good luck with that, but I think that's what they're trying to do. But this kind of fascinates me, reading some of this stuff. Like there were, a couple of days ago, Schefter was like, oh, they don't have the votes. And then Peter Schrager's like, well, maybe they have the votes now. And Ian Rappaport is like, well, this team flipped and now they're on the other side. You know what it is? It's like the movie Conclave. Have you seen this? It was up for best, I think it was. Oscars already happened. Yeah, you could tell I'm not a fan of that awards program, but I know it exists. And I do remember now as I'm speaking that it did indeed happen recently. But the movie Conclave is about how they pick the Pope. And essentially all they do is they're all sequestered in a room and they go, the cardinals or the bishops or whoever they are, priests, they go to different rooms and try to get their fellow holy men to change their mind, to vote for their guy. Like, I want John Paul. You shouldn't vote for Bob. Wouldn't make a good pope. Here's why. Boom, boom, boom. And then the person goes, either I agree with you or no, I still think it should be John Paul. That's literally how this happens, because it's like a team that, like the Packers. So the Packers introduced this. So essentially Brian Gutekunst goes around to his fellow GMs and are like, hey, you need to get your owner to vote against the tush push. And I'm sure they go to the GM for, Adam Peters for Washington is like, wouldn't you like to see it banned? And he's like, yeah, I'd like to see it banned. And they're like, okay, well, we got to get, Buffalo on board. I mean, that's how this works. And they flip votes and everything like that. That's just what it reminds me of. That's just an aside. I'm not really going anywhere with it other than that's what it reminded me of. But I did find this somewhat humorous. Buffalo Bills invoked player safety. Didn't they try this against the Chiefs multiple times? They didn't do it right, but didn't they try it? It's just so stupid. The whole thing is stupid. I just don't understand the fervor that anyone could have to want to ban the tush push, that you hate it so much. Washington fans, you are omitted. Okay, but I would be saying the same thing about coin tosses and first down markers with Buffalo and Kansas City. Like, yes, if I understand why Buffalo fans would want coin toss change, would want how you measure first downs change. But I look at those and I say that's good for everybody. I think everybody benefits. That's just a good development in the National Football League to have a better way of measuring first downs, making sure. Great. The tush push, how many teams have fallen victim to this? It's not every team in the NFL. You got teams that are voting on this thing that won't see the Eagles for like 3 or 4 years on their schedule. Is this so bad of an issue, or are you just trying to stick it to the Eagles? And I can say, following the previous Super Bowl champion as much as I do know that there's a little bit of, you won the Super Bowl, now we're going to get at you a little bit. I would not be surprised if there's some people that are like, you know what? They're the Eagles that are defending champions. Let's knock them down a peg and take away this play of theirs. It's petty. It's childish. But it's what they do. So there you go. Touchbacks go to the 35. Overtime rules in the playoffs and the regular season will be the same. Tush push, TBD. And better way to measure first downs. Take your thoughts on those rule changes. 719-24-7, 1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. If you're making plans for a place to watch the national championship game on Monday, may I suggest Trainwreck at 812 South Sierra Madre. Whether I was there or not, I would still think it's a great place to go. But even more is going on Monday at Trainwreck because I will be there doing this show live leading right up to the national championship game. So come on by, get something to eat, hit the golf simulators, play some pool, play video games. They got sand volleyball pits. If that's your thing, they got so much going on, so much to do. Come on out. If you haven't been there, try it out. If you've been there before, you know what I'm talking about. This Monday, starting at 3, I'll be there, but come by anytime. Trainwreck, 812 South Sierra Madre. These rule changes, and I'm sorry, like some of these are, I can like some and I cannot like some. I don't see any here that are fundamentally changing the game. All of these to me equate to tweaks. And you can only be so emotional about what is, in the grand scheme of things, a slight tweak to the game. Now, some of these are good. The touchback thing, I don't think it's going to get them to the desired result. Okay, and in the world where they care at least somewhat about player safety, they're never going to go back to the way it was. And the way it was produced the Devin Hesters, the Dante Halls of the world. They're just never going back there. So if they want to move up the touchback a little bit, go ahead. I don't think it's going to have the desired effect. The overtime rules, I think it just, and I'll throw in the first down thing too. The better way to measure it. I just think they're common sense. They don't mess up the game by any stretch. They don't slow down the game by any stretch. We don't want games. I get it. You have to go down and score, but I just think I think the way that college football does their overtime is awesome. But I understand the practical nature of the NFL not doing it. But if you can get a little bit of that by just same, and it's not even greatly changing it. Did anybody look at the new rules for overtime in the playoffs and go, whoa, I can't handle this change? No. It all made sense. And now you're just making it uniform across the entire season. I think that's a good thing. I think making sure on something like first downs that could be quick and easy, do it. And that with the tush push, I think the reason why they don't have enough votes to ban it is there are just too many people in the NFL, and I think rightly so, that are like, come on. We don't need to do this. It's one team that does it. It's in a very specific situation. It's not like the Philadelphia Eagles are running the wing option here. They only do it in certain situations. And yeah, it's annoying as all get out going up against it. I get it. But is it ruining the game? Is it a no-brainer decision to ban this? No. So thank you to those of you people in the NFL that are like, what are we doing this for? And to those of you who are trying to carry out some vendetta against the Eagles or just whining that a team has a play that you can't stop, shame on you. Find whatever, you know what it is? Find the torpedo bat. NFL, that's my advice. Find the torpedo bat. Not literally the torpedo bat. That would be against the rules of football. But find your torpedo bat. Hire your former MIT guy, and you get him to figure out the physics of the tush push and how to eliminate them and how to stop it. Find your torpedo bat. Innovation. That's the answer to the tush push. Not a bunch of people voting it down because we can't stop it. Brett says the reason they want to stop the tush push is that it can't be stopped. And it used to be illegal as a rugby play. I have no opinion, but the reason they want to stop it is because they cannot stop it. And I would agree with that. But is that a good reason? Again, think about the number of times. Has anybody published the number of times that Philadelphia has used that play this season? I know they did it on a very high-profile stage in the game. It was not a great look to see Washington continuously jumping over the line of scrimmage to try and stop it. I get that. But how many times out of how many plays does Philadelphia run this? If it was their entire offense and it got them 10 yards of play, I think it matters. I think it matters that we're talking about 1 or 2 yards. It matters how often they run it as a percentage of how many plays are run in the NFL every week, every game, and by the Philadelphia Eagles. It's not a pervasive problem. It's 17 teams problem or 16 teams problem. No, less because you play the division rivals twice. You get my point. If you don't have the Eagles on your schedule, you don't think twice about this. And there's enough else going on in an NFL game, enough other plays that you can win that would put the Eagles in a situation where they can't do the tush push. Has anybody come up with a better idea about how to stop the Philadelphia Eagles on 1st and 2nd down? Maybe attack the problem that way. From the 719, I'm a Buffalo Bills fan and find their Coach McDermott's opposition to the tush push ridiculous. Other than the KC playoff game, voice to text, didn't you? Other than the KC playoff game, the Bills executed that play positively many times throughout the season. And that even more makes my point. So thank you for that. Thank you for that valuable piece of information. But that's what I hate. You want to know what really burns me up about this topic? Is anyone who brings up player safety. Don't wrap yourself in a blanket of player safety. Give me a break. 90% of the coaches would go back to 2-a-days if the NFLPA didn't fight them on it. Come on. That I don't agree with, what Brett texted. I don't agree with we should ban it because we can't stop it. But at least the people that are saying that are which is hardly anybody. You notice that? Nobody's talking about, well, we just want to ban it because we can't stop it. Because how ridiculous does that sound? But you know what? At least an A for honesty. But no one will say, player safety. BS. It's not about player safety. Stop. And the Buffalo Bills doing that is rich. But here's DJ Michael's text in. And I think he makes a good point. He's like, I don't understand how you cannot allow it on the defensive side, but allow it on the offensive side. That's why I don't agree with the tush push. That's a fantastic argument, DJ. As you know, and I have told you that before, that's a great argument, but that's a different argument. So what you're proposing is not to ban the tush push. You're saying tushes on both sides. And I know, like, anybody just like dropping in, I heard maybe it was Rich Eisen's wife on her podcast or I was on the Rich Eisen show when she was filling in, and they were talking about how uncomfortable it is to hear grown men saying the word tush over and over again. I'm sure it is very much that way, but I refuse to consistently call it the brotherly shove. If tushes on both sides of the line of scrimmage are allowed to, if you allow defensive linemen, to my torpedo bat idea, if you allow the defense to be able to do something to stop it, you should allow that, as long as if it's allowed on the offensive side, it should be allowed on the defensive side. That's the best way to put it before I talk more about tush pushes. I think you're right, DJ, but you're bringing up a different argument. You're not against the tush push. You're only against one side of the football having the ability to do that. And if the NFL decided today, you know what? We're going to reinstate or strike the rule that is preventing defensive players from pushing each other into ball carriers, I'm all on board with it. But that's a different argument than just, oh, we're going to ban it. They can't do it. You can't do it. No, I don't like that. Both can do it. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, we'll reset with the three stories that are driving the show. Trouble for the Colorado Avalanche. Lack of motivation for the Denver Nuggets. We'll discuss here on Extra Sports 1300. Hello there. Welcome in. Drive Time Sports on a Tuesday. I'm Ryan Kaufman. Good to meet you. Or good to talk to you if you're already familiar. 719-247-1313 is the number if you would like to call or text the show. If you're watching on our social media platforms at Extra Sports 1300, you can just send us a comment right there and I'll read it. I will. I've done it before. Coming up tonight, Nuggets Wolves. In fact, that's one of the stories that I would like to discuss in a series of 3 that we like to call What's Driving the Show. We're not starting with the Nuggets, though. What we're starting with is, do we have a problem with the Avalanche?
Neil McCarr at center ice, fumbled the puck, turn the other way. Calgary has a 2-on-1. Lomberg again for Klapka. He scores. With 8:31 to go in the third, somehow it's a 2-2 hockey game.
Connor McGahee on the Altitude Sports Radio Network, which we are proud parts of. You heard it right here on Extra Sports 1300. Once again, the Colorado Avalanche, despite being the better team for the vast majority of last night's contest, find a way to get pushed into overtime, and they ended up falling to Calgary in a shootout. This is a full-blown trend with the Colorado Avalanche right now. And I think the reason for it is that in the dog days of the season, with their playoff fate mostly already decided, they are still going for home ice. But when you compare that to Calgary fighting for their playoff lives, when you compare it to the situation that St. Louis finds itself in, it just doesn't measure up. That's not to say it's not a criticism of the Colorado Avalanche. It is. But it's the reality. It's why this keeps happening. And it started with the Dallas game. And I thought it was, good teams will punish you for your mistakes. But now it's looking like the Avs are just having a more difficult time matching the desperation level of their opponents. But is it something that will continue into the postseason? Is it something to worry about? And to that, I say, no. Oh, I don't believe it is. Because even when you take into account the comments Nikola Jokic made a couple weeks ago, where he said he doesn't believe that you can just flip a switch. He is talking about a team that has largely disappointed at more important times of the season and are having some issues that have plagued them throughout the year in the Denver Nuggets, as opposed to the Avalanche, who have shown through the flurry of moves that Chris McFarland made, have fixed a lot of their issues. And it wasn't that long ago that this team looked borderline unbeatable, culminating with the win against Dallas. But that's the way these seasons work, right? You get a few more games and you start to look back and you're like, okay, what's going on here? I think when the postseason rolls around, which is in like 2 weeks, I think the Avalanche will be able to lock in. I do. I believe that. It's not to say that it's all right that they lose these games. You should never lose a game that you are dominating. But I understand why this is happening at this point in the season against these teams. I don't think it's going to ultimately be what undoes or undoes undoes the Colorado Avalanche in the postseason. I really don't. And nor do I think that the bigger issue last night will either, because I do think that there is an internal fix. The thing that bothered me more last night than the Avs coughing up that lead is the fact that for the second consecutive game, I saw a team attempt or successfully attempt to take a run at Cale Makar without retribution. Against St. Louis, a player tried to take his head off at the blue line, and only because Cale Makar is one of the most gifted skaters on planet Earth was he able to get out of that. But nobody went at that dude that I saw and said, hey, don't be trying to take shots at Cale Makar like that. And then last night, and it has to be acknowledged, we can't be so one-sided here. Cale Makar hit Coleman first and hit him a little bit high. Not high enough to warrant a penalty, but hit him pretty high. I can understand why Coleman was upset by that hit. I can understand why Coleman went back and hit Cale Makar. So that sequence in and of itself, to me, fair. Fair. But that doesn't stop teams. When Coleman came back at Cale and hit him, that would 10 times out of 10 elicit a response from the team. And it didn't last night. I don't think Coleman got checked after that. If you want to point out something a little bit more troubling about last night's game, point out that, because that won't stop. Avs' desperation level will naturally go up as they get into the postseason. If teams think they can take a run at Cale Makar and hit him without consequences, that's going to continue. Now, the internal fix for that could just be the return of Josh Manson or the return of Gabriel Landeskog, because he's somebody that will come to the defense of Cale Makar. I thought that was the more troubling thing, actually, out of both of these games. St. Louis and Calgary. Those two teams definitely tried to take out Cale Makar. Coleman was a bit justified in it. We have to be fair. We have to be honest. But him even going back, even if you look at it from an objective standpoint and say it's fair that Coleman came back at him, you would still expect the Avalanche to retaliate against the retaliator. Didn't happen last night. That can't continue. So whether it's getting back Josh Manson or Gabriel Landeskog or somebody else taking up that mantle and becoming Curtis McDermott reincarnate, you know who would come to Cale Makar's defense? Taylor Makar. Maybe they should forget this whole Loveland experiment. Bring up Taylor now. You think that Coleman could take a run at Taylor's brother? No, Taylor Makar would not stand for this. I think both things will be fixed. I don't think either thing needs to be panicked about whatsoever. But the more troubling thing about last night's game was, again, another hit taken on Cale Makar, and nothing happened. Can't do that. Now, let's get to the Nuggets with story number 2. Here's Michael Malone.
I think they've approached these games like it's a rivalry, and I think we've approached these games like it's another game sometimes. And one of my coaches, Andrew Munson, this is his scout, he says it after every time we play them. He goes, I've watched their last 5 to 7 games, and they never play as hard as they do against us. And you can sense that. You can notice it. So you throw everything else out the window, this team's beaten us 5 games in a row, and hopefully that can resonate within our guys, and we can come out with the proper mindset.
Just to remind you, today is April 1st. The NBA season has been going since October. The Denver Nuggets have played the Minnesota Timberwolves multiple times this season. They haven't been waiting since Game 7 to get another crack at the Minnesota Timberwolves. They've had shots. And yet, Michael Malone is still saying what you and I have been saying all along with the Denver. How is his team not more motivated to take down Minnesota than Minnesota is to beat them? Minnesota beat them in Game 7. If any team should be looking past the other one, it should be Minnesota. The Denver Nuggets must rectify this. How can anyone take them to be legitimate? Oh yeah, they're the best team in the West. Not if they can't beat the 7th best team in the West, which is Minnesota right now. How is this possible? That Michael Malone still has to get up there and say, hey guys, they're playing harder than us. They get up for these games more than we do. We should probably match that. You want to talk about the Avs issues? How about this one? This is a bigger issue. The fact that the Nuggets have not been as eager to play Minnesota as Minnesota has been to play them is a damning indictment of this basketball team. This is the team more than anybody else that they should be looking forward to playing. And yet, here's Michael Malone. Well, I kind of hope it will happen tonight. Well, I hope so too. Because if it doesn't, I don't know how you can believe that this team is going to beat Minnesota in a 7-game series, which might be right out of the chute in round 1. And it's just, it's not even a result thing. I'm not even looking for the Nuggets to necessarily beat Minnesota. The first time, they got embarrassed by Minnesota. Like, just show up and make yourself as difficult to play against as they make themselves against you. Michael Malone's absolutely right. It's not an execution issue. It's a mentality issue. And you can't say that Minnesota is in Denver's head, because they're not. This actually shows the polar opposite. The Nuggets don't even give a second thought to Minnesota. And then they step on the court, and then they get metaphorically punched in the mouth, and then they don't know what to do. This team needs to worry more about Minnesota than they've done so far. This is a matchup problem for them, and one they might have to deal with immediately. And can you imagine the repercussions of the Denver Nuggets drawing Minnesota in round 1 and losing again? I bring this up to people, and they look at me like I have 3 heads. Are we so sure that Calvin Booth is going to be the guy that takes the fall for a disappointing end to the Nuggets season? Are we sure about that? Michael Malone keeps saying it. I know he does. I know he's saying it. You got to make it sink in, or else there is the big-time problem with the mentality of this roster. Biggest game of the season tonight. And not for nothing, you can hear it here on Extra Sports 1300. But you can also watch it. I'm not hyping it up because it's on the airwaves. I'm hyping it up because this is a game that the Denver Nuggets need to show up for. And need to prove something. They have something to prove tonight. They need to play like it. Somebody that doesn't have a ton to prove but is still playing like she does is the subject of story number 3.
Strong, hands for Beckers, left wing 3, got it! Paige Beckers knocks down 2 huge jumpers. She's got 25, and UConn back on top by 11, 59-48.
Westwood won on the call. Paige Beckers dropping 31 to send UConn back to the Final Four last night. And I was thinking about this as we have Caitlin Clark moving on from women's college basketball. How much residual effect will there be? How many people that tuned in for the Caitlin Clark phenomenon would stick around, would embrace another player, would make another player must-watch television? Because if there's someone in college, there's 2 people in college basketball. There's a lot of good players, right? And many of them are playing in the Final Four. It's not like there's only talent on 2 programs. There's a lot of talent in women's college basketball. But the 2 for me that are box office, Juju Watkins and Paige Beckers. So if there's anybody that social media should be freaking out about, it's Paige Beckers. If you watched her last night, she was unstoppable. But but I don't feel that. I don't feel that same heat, if you will, that there was with Caitlin Clark. And I think therein lies what makes a phenomenon. Right? Because you could say, as purely basketball players, Paige Beckers and Caitlin Clark aren't worlds apart. You may think one's better than the other, but not by a wide margin. And I think there would be people that say that Paige Beckers all around as a basketball player is better than Caitlin Clark. You could argue with them, but my point is not who's better than the other. My point is that they're in the same conversation in terms of talent and ability. But yet one is this global phenomenon, at least a national phenomenon. I don't pretend to be hanging out in Europe and knowing how they feel about Caitlin Clark. Certainly nationally a phenomenon. And yet here's a basketball player that is on the same level. And just, I don't feel like she's getting as much energy and as much attention as Caitlin Clark did. But therein lies, and this was kind of, and I'm not complaining about it necessarily. I do think that people should appreciate how Paige Beckers is playing, but I don't want to fall in the same trap that so many WNBA veterans have fallen into, and not understanding that even though you may be better than a player, or a player may not have paid her dues yet, the idea of a phenomenon has more, there's more to it, right? Caitlin Clark is a great interview. Paige Beckers, not so much. Caitlin Clark is hitting shots from the logo. Not a lot of players are doing that. Look at Steph Curry. Why did Steph Curry? And I'm talking as the Warriors were ascending, before they became a dynasty. Steph Curry was a phenomenon. Why? Because he was taking these shots. It wasn't the amount of points he was scoring. It was how he was doing it. It's not the fact that you're a star if you're Caitlin Clark. It's how you're a star. Yes, she is supremely talented as a basketball player and deserves to be celebrated as such, but there are some other things that go into it that make her what she was, that Paige Beckers may not have. It's not an indictment on Paige Beckers by any stretch of imagination. Just more of an observation than anything else. But she's great. I mean, if you just want to watch a player just straight out hoop, Paige Beckers. And now she'll be in the Final Four trying to bring yet another national championship to UConn. Take your thoughts on the 3 stories that are driving the show. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, to stadium or not to stadium? Let me rephrase that, because that's vague. to build a stadium or to not build a stadium? And what kind of a stadium? Greg Penner, Broncos owner, weighed in on this at the owners' meetings, and I'll talk about it next on Extra Sports 1300. Tom Segura is bringing his Come Together tour to Colorado Springs on Sunday, November 9th at 7 p.m. The date and time that you should be more preoccupied with at this point is when tickets go on sale, which they do on Friday, this Friday, April 4th, 10 a.m. And I think this show is going to be very well received in Colorado Springs. One of the bigger comedians going right now, Tom Segura. So make sure Friday, 10 a.m., AXS.com, or you could go pick them up in person at the Pikes Peak Center box office. Brett texting in saying, according to the FCC, if you say tush push 3 more times, you'll have to change your parental guidance rating. Thought you would want to hear it from me. It's good. I wasn't keeping track, but that is, I don't want to do that. And then the Pat McAfee show. Although, I'll just say this and I'll move on. Have you been listening to some of the subject matter on the show that precedes me on this station? Anyway, Greg Penner yesterday was asked a variety of questions as per usual. He's become he's a nice blend of stay out of the way, but also you kind of want to know what he has to say. And there are a lot of NFL teams and in just professional teams in general that don't have that. Like there's one owner in particular that I can think of, and I think we're all on the same wavelength, that if I never hear him speak again, I would be totally fine with that. But Greg Penner, it's like he does a good job of staying out of the way and writing checks when he needs to, because that's the best thing an owner can do. Hire smart people, keep writing checks, stay out of the way. Do your job. And he does his job very well. Has to this point. Once in a while, he'll drop in and say, hey, you get a new field. Awesome. He's like your rich uncle. I had one of those. And instead of buying me one year a birthday present, and he lived in a different state than I did, but when I visited him once, he just took me, I think it was to Target or something, and he's like, just, what do you want? And of course, I was a kid at the time. I was 35. And I said, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. And he got it all. That's what Greg Penner has become. Rich uncle. Hey, you want here's a new field. Sport, go have fun. You want another assistant coach, Sean Payton? You got it. He's really off to a very good start as an owner, you have to say. But his next big order of business might change people's feelings on Greg Penner. Because apparently, yesterday, he got a lot of people in Denver upset when he said that they are entertaining locations that aren't technically Denver for their potential new stadium. And I think we could be real with each other. They're going to get a new stadium. Right? We can agree on this. It's just a matter of what kind of stadium, which I'll get into, and where this thing is going to be placed, right? Right. Apparently, they're in quite the tizzy up north because he entertained the possibility of putting the stadium in Lone Tree or Aurora. And there are people that are upset because it's not within the city limits of Denver. Now, it has to be said that if you do not live in Denver proper, like, say, for instance, Colorado Springs, I would say a stadium in Lone Tree might actually be better. Yeah. So I understand that this whole conversation is very Denver based. And there's a civic pride that goes into it. For most people outside of the Denver metropolitan area, Aurora, Lone Tree, Denver, Brighton, Thornton, like, who cares? I'm going to Denver. What do you say? Even if you're going to Aurora, do you say you're going to Aurora or do you say you're going to Denver? So I get it. It's a very localized issue, but there are things that apply to everybody. That goes in this stadium, even if you are not in the Denver metropolitan area. You may go to Broncos games. Would putting it out by the airport be an ideal spot for you? Would putting it in Thornton be a little bit more inconvenient for you? Would you like it to be in Thornton, or would you rather it be in the same spot? So that it has to be in Denver does not really apply to a lot. But we've talked about, like, with the NWSL team coming in, that putting things where Dick's Sporting Goods Park is just a bad idea all around. Like, it's not convenient for anybody. It's out of the way for everybody. People from Fort Collins, people from in Denver, people in Colorado Springs, like, that's just a bad spot. And that's why the NWSL team's like, yeah, no, we're good. We're going to build our stadium downtown. Thank you. But Lone Tree is not out of the way. And depending on where they put in Aurora, it may not be totally out of the way. But here's what I'll say about the whole, it's got to be in Denver. There are 12 NFL teams right now that do not have their stadium in the city proper. 12. It's kind of a decent chunk of teams, no? Giants and Jets. Well, actually, it's 13 because they share the stadium. So, Giants and Jets. They're not even in the same state. Cowboys do not play in Dallas. They play in Arlington. 49ers are in Santa Clara. SoFi Stadium, home to two more NFL teams, is in Inglewood. The Commanders play in Landover, Maryland. The Patriots play in Foxborough. The Bills play in Orchard Park. The Cardinals play in Glendale. The Dolphins play in Miami Gardens, which someone would have to point out on a map. Difference between Miami and Miami Gardens. Tennessee Titans, they play in Nashville, so they're good. And the Raiders. Did you know this? Raiders actually don't play in Las Vegas. They play in Paradise. I legitimately did not know that. Now, some of these are bigger issues than others, but it seems like it's a fairly normal practice depending on what you're after. And without significant financial investment, I don't see that the current site is the best place for it to be moving forward. If you could find some place within the city limits of Denver, in Denver proper, all great. But you know who Greg Penner is related to by marriage? Stan Kroenke. What did Stan Kroenke do? He didn't just build a stadium. He built a city around his stadium. And if the Broncos are thinking along the same lines, I don't know how in Denver is going to be feasible. Oh, I get it. I'm not trying to be insensitive, because if I were living inside the city limits of Denver, I might have a more of a visceral reaction to the idea of putting the stadium in Lone Tree or Aurora. I think that you want to make sure that it's easy to get to. right? Which, if you are a San Francisco 49ers fan in San Francisco, that's not an easy trip out to Santa Clara. Some of these are just, right next door. You wouldn't even know the difference unless you were, unless you actually live there. But here's the bigger aspect of this. Whether they put it in Aurora or Denver or Lone Tree, I can't say that not living there that I care. I really can't say that I do. But I think this is the thing that applies to everybody. Greg Penner said that they are considering all options in terms of how enclosed the stadium is. Outdoor, dome, retractable roof. They're considering it all. And I'll tell you where I think they're going to land. They're going to land on a retractable roof or I know there are a million different kinds of roof. The idea that it's not closed all the time or it's not completely closed. So they're not going to dome. Nobody's going to dome like a legitimate dome. Does anybody even do that anymore? But the retractable, I don't think it's going to be a completely open air stadium. I don't, because the main goal of NFL teams right now is to get a Super Bowl, to get other large sporting events at your venue. And there is no way that a Super Bowl is ever going to be played in Denver if they have a completely open air stadium. It will never, ever, ever happen. I think that matters a great deal to Greg Penner. I think that would matter a great deal to the city of Denver as a whole, right? You would like to get those big events. Denver got passed over for the World Cup. And yet the U.S. is playing at SoFi in front of, who called that MCI crowd, family and friends only. That's what that third place game all the games that the U.S. played at their last competition. Nobody showed up to SoFi. But you want the big events. You can't be an open air stadium in a place that it could snow out of nowhere. And I think that the Denver Broncos want to host a Super Bowl. They want to host big events. They want to bring that economic impact. They want to bring those tourists. And I think that's where they're going. And I think there are some Broncos fans that are opposed to that. Call me a wimp if you want. Many people have for a variety of reasons. I would very much like to see my football climate controlled. And the stadium of my team has the same problem. If Kansas City tomorrow decided that they want to build a new stadium with a roof, I'd be all for it. I want climate controlled sports. Playing in that, and I get it. Denver has more nice days Colorado has more nice days than people give it credit for. But I would very much like to control for the days that are absolutely miserable around here if I'm going to a sporting event. I am pro roof. Whatever that roof looks like, how retractable it is, whether it's like a sunroof, I don't know. They can figure that out, whatever looks most aesthetically pleasing, whatever costs less, whatever they want to do. But I would be for somewhat indoor football. Again, we're not talking about the Metrodome. Although, New Orleans gets some big events. They get the Super Bowl and they have a dome. But I think the more modern roof, I think that's where they're going. And I would be okay with it if I were going to a Broncos game. But I'm not the target. Like, I don't even care if the Chiefs were bickering over whether they should be in Kansas City, Kansas, or Kansas City, Missouri, and I could not care less. I couldn't. But it is a hot button issue. Don't move out to Kansas. Stay in Missouri. I get it. I understand it, and I can't care as much as somebody who lives in the city. I think the more important thing, though, is what kind of a stadium are you going to put in? And I think they want to host the Super Bowl. And I think they want to take the elements out of it. And I would be for that. Take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. One last segment of Drive Time Sports right after this. The reigning USL champions, Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC, back at Weiner Field this Saturday, hosting New Mexico United for game night. Kickoff is at 4. Get your tickets now at switchbacksfc.com. This is the part of the show with the corrections, and I got a correction in that is 100% right. You were wrong on 2. Arizona and New England neither use a city name. The list that I pulled up, I think what it was going for is you think that this team is located in this city. They're not. So New England, you think of Boston. I think, too, probably you don't because you know that they're in Foxborough, but I think many people would think that New England Patriots play in Boston and Arizona Cardinals play in Phoenix. I think that's what the list was. So the correct list would be Giants, Jets, obviously, Dallas, San Francisco, both LA teams, the Commanders, Bills, Dolphins, and the Raiders. It exists. And I don't know, and I legitimately don't know how many of these fan bases were upset or are upset. That their stadiums are not actually in the city that they use or that they have in their name. I don't know, but I would bring up a line from just a cinematic marvel. It was Thor Ragnarok. The Denver Broncos are not a place. They're a people. So whether you have the Denver Broncos in Aurora or Lone Tree or in downtown Denver, they are still the Denver Broncos. But that is, I mean, civic pride, I get all that. I think the more pertinent discussion is how hard is this thing going to get to? And they're going to put a roof on it. We'll see. I think they are going to put some sort of an enclosure on the stadium so they can host. I mean, think about what it opens up. Final Fours, Super Bowls, WrestleManias. I think that's what they're going to do. Their lease runs out in 6 years. So they got a little bit to figure it out, but also stadium construction takes a while. So probably should figure out at some point here. Nuggets got to show something tonight. I'm not saying that they have to win. If they lose on a well-played game on a shot at the horn by Anthony Edwards, okay. Don't love it, but okay. If they, even in Minnesota, again, doesn't have Naz Reid and doesn't have Dante DiVincenzo, one of those guys makes the Nuggets' life very difficult. That's Naz Reid. Dante DiVincenzo is just less talent on the Wolves without Dante DiVincenzo. Injury report for I'm just saying it's even more of a reason. And I'm not going to say that, without Naz Reid, it completely changes everything. It's part of it. It's part of it, and I think there will be some people that even if the Nuggets win, they'll be like, yeah, well, Naz Reid was out. Okay, there's a progression. We haven't even gotten to the point where we can diminish a Nuggets win over the Minnesota Timberwolves because they did not have Naz Reid. We're not even to that point yet because they, in one of the meetings, they haven't even been competitive. In another meeting, there was a ton of players out. Like, let's just get to the point where it doesn't look like the Nuggets are having the worst night of their lives playing against the Wolves. And then we'll say, okay, if they don't look that way, how much does Naz Reid make a difference? And that's why I try to take winning and losing out of it. It's how they look tonight that I think matters to me. And if I see a team that has finally had the words of Michael Malone sink in that they should get up for this game, they should care about this game, they should very much want to win this game. That's all I want to see. The result is the result, and it's a different conversation, and we'll have that conversation tomorrow. But first and foremost, I just want to see the Nuggets compete level be there. Show us that this matchup matters to you, that you understand that there is a real doubt that no matter what point in the playoffs you see them in, no matter who has home court, you will lose to Minnesota because you can't beat them. Now you know what the Lakers feel like. It doesn't feel good for there to be this belief that no matter how hard you try, no matter what you do, you cannot beat them. Don't let it grow into a Nuggets-Lakers thing. And I know, Laker fan, the Nuggets have lost to the Lakers in recent memory, but it's BL and AL or BD and AD. But before Luka and after Luka. New era in LA. They got Luka. They're not losing to the Nuggets every single time. So, injury report tonight. Nikola Jokic, probable. Jamal Murray, questionable. Aaron Gordon, questionable. Christian Brown, probable. And that should mean that Michael Porter is good to go. He said, lays from Vinny Benedetto, great Nuggets beat writer. See if he has any updates. We might be too early. He did comment yesterday that he didn't remember seeing Aaron Gordon at practice. So we'll know closer to tip-off. The game is at 8 o'clock tonight. I would very much like all the Nuggets starting five to be there to play in this game. And then if we watch the game and we decide, well, Naz Reid made all the difference in the world, okay, let's have that conversation. I think there's much more that the Nuggets can show without minimizing it because Naz Reid was out. But we'll take it all in and we'll formulate our opinions and we'll reconvene tomorrow at 3. How's that sound? You can hear the game, by the way, tonight at 8 here on Extra Sports 1300.
Do you realize that if you make the minimum monthly payments on your credit cards, it will